Hey, welcome to our YouTube channel. I'm Pastor Nathan Metz here at Community Church in Newark, Ohio. Here in a moment, you're going to witness one of the most important things we do as the church, preach. But before we begin, I just want to make two quick notes. First, we haven't figured everything out. A sermon is not a report of cold, hard facts. It's a testimony of a warm, living God. We're still discovering, even the preacher. We're still discovering more and more of who he is. A sermon is a great way to learn more about him. And second, this format is really convenient. You can watch it whenever you want to watch. You can pause it if you need. You can rewind, turn it up, have snacks. There's no replacement for in-person, living, breathing community. The church is not a building. It's people. It's plural. If you are able, don't let your church experience shrink to the size of a video. Find a church near you and begin a relationship with them. Until then, grab your Bible, your highlighter, your pen, paper, whatever you use, and let's rightly divide the Word of God as the Holy Spirit works within us all.
Hi, guys. Good morning. Oh, you're going to have to come up a little. Because Tiffany won't see you.
Yeah, but I'm trying to so they can see.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Can I
He's
scoot
taller
back?
than you, so it's fine.
Okay. Well, hi, everyone. I am Jade, and I am Pastor Nathan's wife and also the outreach pastor here. And we are going to interview Tiffany Janofsky, who is a missionary to Albania. And we have some really great questions for her today that I think that you'll be deeply encouraged, and it will be relatable. And we are so excited that she's here. I think you're going to be challenged. Teens, I'm especially excited. We're going to have to sort herself out.
How's that?
I don't know. Can you go behind me?
You want me to sit right here?
I don't know.
I think we're good.
Okay. I'm excited for the teens today. I hope y'all are listening. I'm excited for everybody, but especially the teens, because I think sometimes we can minimize the call of our youth, our kids in middle school and in high school. And we've just prayed in the service that the teens would just be just open and ready to hear today, and that we as the church, as their elders, will just affirm the calls that they have in their lives. So teens, get ready. Okay, I've done enough talking. Can you tell us who you are and what you do? Josh, do we have the couple of pictures from the beginning? Perfect. Okay, great. So can you tell this really kind and hospitable and loving congregation who you are?
Yes, so as Jade mentioned, my name is Tiffany Janofsky. I'm a global worker with World Gospel Mission, and I serve on the field in Albania. I've lived there for the past about 2.5 years. Just came back to the States in December to do just relational visits with churches and partners, and this entire weekend has been an incredibly warm weekend and hospitable weekend. You guys are a really amazing group of people that I have just sensed the love of Jesus in. So thank you so much for receiving me with such warmth. I grew up in the church. Actually, for a while, Nathan and Jade and I went to church together in Indiana. And so I grew up a pastor's kid and was in church what felt like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, plus Sunday. And so it felt like it was a lot, but I don't know that I would have it any other way looking back. I'm sure I had some annoyance and resentment maybe towards my parents, but looking back, I'm so thankful that that's the space. These are the people that I got to really be shaped by and formed by. And I look back and I don't know that I would be where I am today had I not been poured into and invested so deeply by a community of believers who are living out the gospel incarnationally, and I got to witness that. And so, what exactly was your question again?
That's okay. That's
what all do you want me to share?
No problem. I would
Thank
just
you.
love for you to tell them what you do in Albania.
Okay.
Yep. That's great.
So, yes, I am recently the director of a foundation, a really small foundation underneath the umbrella ministry of WGM, and the ministry is called VT Albania. We're in a really small village, and we are basically a daycare center for young adults with physical disabilities. And so we provide education. We kind of start them from their primary education, work with them all the way up to their high school degree, and then also provide physical therapy twice a week. And then we try to do special events, things that they just haven't had the opportunity to do. Albania is not a handicap-accessible country in many ways, even just the landscape, the structures of buildings is not catered to anyone with a disability. And then on top of that, there's just a lot of stigma attached to anyone with a disability, whether it's mental or physical. And so the majority of the situations, the reality is that anyone with a disability, they're they're inside their homes all the time, isolated from their community, kept a secret from their community because they're viewed upon as being a shame or a curse to their family. And so, you know, I think back on this past year of pandemic and lockdown, we experienced just a really small degree of isolation and loneliness to what our friends in Albania experience really on a day-to-day basis. And so as uncomfortable as quarantine and lockdown was, it's been a humbling process for me to be able to thank God for just understanding a little bit better what my friends experience. And so how can we draw them out from isolation and to live this narrative of the truth of the gospel, that they're made in God's image, that He loves them, that they were created on purpose, but for a purpose. They have things to contribute to society. They have a seat at the table that's ready and waiting for them. And we have the responsibility and the privilege to live that out, to come alongside them and to affirm their worth and introduce them to Jesus. And so we've had some incredible transformation stories take place. And so it's just really exciting work that we get to be a part of, and hard, but incredibly exciting and a privilege.
How much of that did you know about when you set your mind going to Albania? Did you go there and discover that?
Yeah, I wasn't going to Albania at all. So Albania was a surprise. And I first got there, I was in Albania for about a year before I started volunteering with this organization, VT. And I'll be honest, my very first year, any sort of special needs ministry, disability issue was not on my radar at all, simply because you don't see people out and about with a disability, so it's almost as if it's out of sight, out of mind. And so, wasn't on my radar, but my colleagues that I work with are incredibly compassionate people who I just had the privilege to work with, and they volunteered at this organization, and for the first year kept saying, Tiffany, you gotta get out there, you gotta get out there. And there's so many things to say yes to. That's what kind of, I think you're gonna hear a lot this Sunday is, yes, God, yes, and I'm a yes person. And so I probably said yes to too many things initially, which didn't leave enough time, but I did finally give a yes to VT. And the first week I was there, God just made it clear, this is your yes. Gave a lot of clarity.
What does VT stand for?
Our organization's name is VT Albania, and VT stands for Valued Treasure. Yeah. And so we believe that our friends, our students that we have, are valued treasures of God and are not to be hidden away.
And are they the ones, is this your classroom that you guys meet together here?
Yes. We just moved into a fully handicap accessible building.
Okay.
And so this is our classroom. This is the majority of our students. Previously, we were meeting in a 3-story building with no elevator. So our students had to be manually transferred from their chair to a manual stair climber, pulled backwards up stairs, flights of stairs to get to the classroom. Our PT room was on the first floor, and so our very gracious and strong like an ox driver would have to take them back and forth multiple times in the day. So God has blessed us with this new building, complete with an elevator that's large enough for somebody in a wheelchair, plus another individual. they're able to go all the way up to the terrace by themselves. And so to be able to see them walk around, some of them are in walkers and then others are in wheelchairs, to see them move around the building completely independent it just screams their dignity. It's awesome to see.
It's those little things that we take for granted as Americans. A couple weeks ago for Mother's Day, we talked about feminine hygiene products with the Dignity Project. Tiffany actually came and served with us in Uganda for a week, came and visited. But it's stunning to realize that something so basic as feminine hygiene products that we can just go and buy $10 of really easy is not, it's not accessible in Uganda. And just thinking of, I'm assuming, am I right that like every building you have, like the code is in America is handicap accessible? Is that right? Wouldn't our trustees probably know that? Like every building in America has to be handicap accessible? Do you know that? Is that true?
I know ADA's still relatively new here. It's only like 30 years, but
Really?
there are certain codes that you have to align with.
Yeah.
Which is not existent in Albania.
Yeah.
So have you found the feeling of being born and raised in that environment, it's not just a matter for them of, man, it's frustrating that there's no elevator. It goes a lot deeper than that. Are you still kind of discovering how deep that really goes?
Yeah, so just a side story here to answer that. Disability in Albania is really taboo. Counseling in Albania is really taboo. But our students, we were able to have a counselor come last year and meet with our students individually. And of course, they didn't get details, but talking with the counselor afterward and hearing how valuable those sessions were to work through some of the trauma that they've experienced in isolation, being viewed less than, being marginalized even further. And so this little side story here, we offer Bible studies weekly at VT. We don't force our students to come. We want them to come on their own terms, and that is okay if they don't, because we know we're meeting them incarnationally with the gospel, even outside of a Bible study. But for the past 5 years, one of our students has refused to come to our Bible studies, just not into it. It comes from a very strong Muslim home, so it would almost be dishonoring to his family if he did. But we're meeting him outside of Bible study. We're having those conversations. And so this young man, incredibly amazing, respectable young man, agreed to meet with this counselor who we had last semester come. And our counselor who came was a Christian counselor who was also a female. And so for a young, strong Muslim young man to consistently meet with a Christian female counselor is a really, really big deal. And so while I would love to see him come to our Bible studies, I have to know and see that God is softening his heart, and maybe what would be an untraditional way, he's meeting him where he's at. He's breaking down some walls and barriers that, man, I'd love it to happen in a Bible study, but I also pray that my eyes are open to see how God is working beyond what my expectations are.
That is brilliant, because the chances of him walking into a church are zero. But finding a place and meeting a need that's real for him and then making available to him the gospel in that space, that is a fantastic link that for him could be, it is absolutely necessary. There's no way he's going to go from where he is into the church. He needs some sort of transfer. Yeah. And what you're doing provides that. That's awesome.
Yeah. I think of this of what are the back doors that we can meet our students. They're not going to come through the front doors. What are the back doors where we can meet them, whether it's a felt need or just relationship? What are some other areas that we aren't assuming, but we're asking them, we're getting to know, what do you see your need is, and how can we come to the back door and help you with that?
Very good. Very good.
It's very good.
I love that. I last fall taught about being incarnational and transformational and unbelievable in our suit. And the quality of transformational is just the art of accommodating ourselves to one another, of just learning people's interest in who they are before even talking about Jesus. Like, I think sometimes as Christians, we put this pressure on ourselves to talk to people about Jesus, but the Holy Spirit lives inside us. And so if we're just naturally ourselves, we have the fruits of the Spirit, and Jesus talks through us. And so I just love that you're doing that in Albania, and just getting to know students on a who they are as people level, and accommodating yourselves to their needs. And God is so clever to bring the gospel truth through those everyday activities. It's fantastic. So Nathan, can you help number 3? Can you ask the question number 3? Can you chat about that? I want you to take that over, and then I'll follow up with you, and then she'll speak.
Okay. The question, I'm going to ask it, but I got to qualify it. I got to explain it. Okay. The question is, what are the qualities in yourself that you've purposed? We ask that because we found I've always been preaching, but I haven't always had the gospel. Jade's always been passionate, but she hasn't always had the gospel. What are the things in yourself that you would say are maybe specific to Albania, maybe global missions in general, but that you have discovered, I was just born with this and haven't really needed it in this way until I was put in this place at this time, and it just blossomed out of you. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I will try. Did you have a...
Yeah, if it helps, like when the church knows that I didn't come to know the Lord until my early 20s, in marriage, really. I mean, I knew about him, but I was in a trickle, as we like to say here. Jade, from a 12-year-old to a 22-year-old or 20-year-old, was, I was passionate, I was fiery. I would say that when I didn't know the Lord, my peers, or I would probably be described as like mouthy, just fiery, passionate. But then as I began to know the Lord, he redeemed my tongue, and he used it for good. And I was an only child, and I was very, I was capable of doing things on my own. I was very like, do this by myself, kind of go-getter girl. So a fiery, passionate, only child who was able to go out and just do things on my own, not really a fearful person. The Lord sanctified those things and redeemed those things. And then on the field, when I was, I think 32, I came to this realization on my 32nd birthday that like God had redeemed all those things, and that it took a passionate, just go-getter, I'm okay to be by myself, for me to go out to the villages in our Land Cruiser by myself and to preach the gospel. And so God had redeemed that out of control Jade from 12 to 20, and he redeemed those things. And then you get on the field and you realize like all of those things that I wasn't sure that God really designed for me to be. I was so scared of them or intimidated by them, or the devil used them for bad things. He used those exact things that I needed for the field to accomplish his purposes. Are there things like that in yourself?
Yeah, I for the past couple of years, I feel like I've been doing a lot of kind of self-evaluation, self-inventory, reflection. And is anybody familiar with the Enneagram? A few? Okay. Is that okay if I... Okay. I don't know if we need to explain it or... Okay. So...
It's a personality test.
Yeah. So my personality is in this personality or motivational sort of test would be the giver, the helper. And I grew up just kind of aware that I had a really like tender and compassionate heart. I grew up, like I mentioned, in the pastor's home, and so there was always a level of service that was happening, just being aware of different needs. And I would say before I really took Jesus' words seriously about his people and about who we are to him, my worth and my value would have come from serving and helping others with the expectation that I'm going to get something back that is an indicator of my value and my worth and how it's reciprocated. And so there was always this underlying motivation of like, I'm going to do this because I need to feel loved, that you need me. And hopefully, because I'm doing this, you're going to help me. You're going to, scratch my back later. And that was where my worth and value came in from. And so over the last several years, understanding that that is not a biblical approach or understanding of love. The love that Christ shows is unconditional. It is without expectation, or if you want to go to Corey Asbury's song, Reckless Love, it's going out without the expectation that you're going to receive anything. And for most of my life, I lived doing loving acts, but with the expectation, you're going to love me because of what I can do for you. Or even meeting somebody and saying, there's only two kinds of people. It's people who love me or people who haven't met me yet. Yes. And so, because challenge accepted, you're going to like me.
Wait, are you being serious?
I'm being 100% serious.
You guys, that is my jam. I love that because I get so, wait, I got to stop there. I'm so into that. I love that so much. I tell ladies in Bible study, and I've told this church, like, you should walk into every single room. Tanya, I'm telling you, Cindy, you need, my girls, you need to show up in every room, even men, you too. You need to show up in every room and just assume everyone's going to love you. Why? Because if you don't assume that everyone there loves you, you will not bring your full self. Like, I will not be me, Jade, if I don't assume that everyone in this room cares about me and loves me. I will be scared to be myself. I won't pray in the wrong direction. I won't mess up. Like, that's who I am. And so if we don't, I'm just going on a rabbit trail, aren't I? Huh? I'm going on a rabbit trail.
That's a good trail.
I'm so with you in that.
I love you in your trail.
Yes. That we should just show up in every conversation, every coffee, everything we do, like just assuming. I was just talking to Amber in the hallway. I was like, you're someone who I'm a little intimidated by, but I've always wanted to get to know you. And she was telling me women that she's kind of intimidated by, she loved to get to know. And we're all just walking around like, do they like me? Do they like me? Yes, of course they like you. Be your full self because they like you. Am I with you?
Because I have the freedom now in Christ to do that.
Yes. Yeah. It's not pride. It is like God designed me to be me, and maybe that will help you be you. Is that right? Were we tracking?
A little bit.
Okay.
A little bit.
You bring me back.
A little bit. That's so generous, Tiffany.
Was I on a whole different train of thought?
A little bit.
Okay. Maybe it's because I say it so much to myself. It's just I hear it in everything now. I'm sorry.
Okay, how do we come back out of this now? So, no, but living.
That reminds me of my sermon last week, actually. No, it doesn't at all. What are you saying?
So for many years, I had to have people love me. And there would even be a manipulation of that, like,
wrong motive.
Yes, the wrong motive. And coming to understand at a heart level, at a deep level of Jesus' love is not like that at all. It is not manipulative. It is pure. It is, regardless of whether I accept him or not, he loves me. And thank God my response has been to reciprocate it back to him. Yeah. But his love is unconditional. And when I know that, when I experience his love for me that way, then I can give love to the fullest to others without this expectation of what you can give me in return.
How did doing what you're doing in Albania accomplish that?
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of challenge on the field. There's a lot of misunderstandings. When you add a cultural dynamic that's different and one that you're daily trying to learn and trying to pivot your life to, you just need a lot of grace. And I feel like there's a lot of times I wish I could offer something when I'm in Albania that I don't know how to offer it. And I have to accept that still my yes, my obedience to Jesus is going to redeem situations where I can't maybe manipulate the situation. I have to believe that his grace is sufficient for those circumstances and not rely on my own self to be everybody's best friend.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's applicable totally to people here in the congregation who are just, I mean, we're all trying to live our life on purpose and be in the trenches with people and doing it because it's the right thing, even though you might not see the fruit or, yeah. What were you going to say?
I didn't like my follow-up. I retract it.
Oh. So can I ask, what is the thing that Albania needs from you that feels very natural? Do you want to see my lineup of questions? Will that help you? We're on number 4, and then that's the next number 5.
Unnatural.
What is the thing that Albania needs from you that feels very unnatural? For Nathan, would you like to say what yours was on the field, Nate? What you like to do with walking down the street and conversation?
Well, a silly one that didn't feel that silly at the time. There were 2, one of which was the high respect of getting the fat of the meat, because I was a special guest at the meal. And so having a blob of fat on my plate, you're welcome. Thank you for visiting our village. Here's this for your lunch. And the men there.
Gag. Wouldn't you just want to gag?
I don't want to get into the details of my process and what I did with that.
Trying to be dignified.
It went down the pipe. I'll just leave it at that. I totally lost my train of thought. I went back to a very dark place just there. Yes, the other I would say it felt unnatural. It would be physical affection from men who were my friends there, that even as men, here, American men, if you want to make a point, you'll put your hand on their shoulder and you'll look at them and say, and you make your statement. There, as you're walking down the road, a man might grab your hand, and what it means is we're connected to each other, we're talking, and we're close. Yeah. And so a number of times that happened, and I realized if I pull my hand away, American style, I'm ruining my relationship that I desperately want. And what does he mean by this, and do I agree? And yes, so it felt unnatural for me. That's one very small example, but you know what I'm getting at now.
Yes. For me, it would probably be the warmth of hospitality that Albanians offer. As I mentioned before, I am labeled as the giver, the helper, and so for me to sit and receive and not be able to contribute at all is a very uncomfortable position for me. But me doing that allows for my friends, the family that I'm visiting, to have that honor to do that, and not to elevate myself, but that is their culture, that's their practice, and so I'm honoring them by allowing that to take place. And that's a really, really uncomfortable spot for me to be in. It can be overwhelming at times, but it has taught me about hospitality in such a way that I have never experienced before. I think Albanians I think I fully experienced 1 Thessalonians 2:8, where Paul says, "We cared for you so deeply that we desired not only to share the gospel of God, but of our own lives as well, because we cared for you so much. You had become very dear to us." And I feel like I have experienced that to the full in Albania, in an Albanian home setting. And even though that is uncomfortable for me at times, I have experienced the hospitality of God in that. Another aspect, this is a little bit countercultural even for Albanians, something that my life stage isn't necessarily what I imagined for myself. I didn't imagine that I'd be going into my second term to a foreign country single still at the age of 30. And so God has really been doing a work on my heart and helping me to understand that my singleness, even though it's countercultural to Albanian culture, where marriage is kind of an arrival point, it's a status, my singleness, I'm able to serve my single Albanian young female friends in demonstrating and living out that worth does not come from a ring on your wedding finger. Your worth does not come from a status of marriage, from a certificate, even from having children. Your worth comes only from God, and He has already given you worth from the day that you were conceived, from the day that He planned for you. Your worth comes from Him. And so that, what I have to offer right now, I feel like, is being single in the trenches with my Albanian friends and reminding them your worth is because you've been created in the image of God by a God who loves you.
So your singleness actually preaches something without you even saying anything. Have you noticed that? You walk into a room and you realize there's no husband here, and it already begins to communicate. Do you feel a pressure to have to explain it?
At times.
Is it common, you said that people in Albania who have disabilities, that they are kind of thought of as cursed. Would you say that the population of people who you serve, your friends that you lovingly call, I love it, this group of people that you serve in VT, are most people with disabilities married or single? Do you feel like that has really served in this season, being single, serving them and helping them to see not only are you created it on purpose by God, but that your singleness isn't a curse or What do you have to say to that?
Most of our students are single. I'll just share the story of one of our students. She is 19 or 20 years old. Born without any disabilities, lived a fairly normal life. She was in high school, her senior year of high school. She was walking home, and she had her headphones in, walking really close to train tracks, really close to her home. Didn't hear a train coming, and the train snagged her backpack and dragged her. And she was in the hospital for 8 months and had 6 different operations. And she was also engaged to be married. Typically in the village, you are promised to somebody pretty early. And so she was engaged, and after her operations, after her recovery process, the fiance's family decided that it would be in their best interest that they ended the engagement. Wow. She wasn't recovering as fast as they thought that she should. And so in a matter of an instant, when she got hit by that train, her entire life changed. Yeah. She suddenly became almost homebound, basically. She lives on a really steep mountain that we have a hard time even getting to with our truck. No more school, no more social life, really. No more future for this man that she was expected to be married to not too long after. And so being able, she's one that I think of specifically, being able to communicate to her that she still has all of her value, all of her worth. She's not what's the phrase I'm trying to think of? Spoiled goods. Yeah. She's not something to be disposed of and forgotten about and left at home. Yeah. She has so much to contribute to society and the value that she has. Yeah. And so being able to, I feel that God has given me the chance to share that with her as another single. Whether that truth was shared to her from somebody who was married, I don't know that she would receive that, because she would say, but you're married, that's easy for you to say. Yeah. You know, you're not in that same situation. You can't understand what I'm going through. It may be true, but it's easier for you to say that. And so for me to have that ability to share that with her, of somebody who's kind of in not similar circumstances, but we've got that in common. I feel like can hold more, bear more weight, being able to share that. And so that's part of what we get to do. We get to affirm that to our students.
It's a good reminder to all of us in the room not to resent the seasons that God has us in. And that's awesome. Do you have any follow-up with that?
Not necessarily. Well, kind of a follow-up. I'm just sitting here thinking about, we know each other, Tiffany, because our parents were friends. That's how we met. I was very close with your brother for many years, especially through high school and college. And I'm just thinking of the things that you're saying right now, which are just top-tier, world-class, beautiful gospel statements that I like to stand here and tell the truth. But there is a kind of Jesus lived out gospel telling that is breathed into the lives minute by minute, sharing in the real crisis experiences and earned through relationship the right to even touch that part of their life. Yeah. She gave you the permission to touch that part of her life, which you know has got to be sensitive. What happened between when we were going to the same Sunday school teachers and walking down the same halls? You didn't surely just finish your Sunday school, go to college, and then say, now it's time for Albania. What were the yeses or the major movements or chapters of your life? Because most of us are living in the normal Christian church activity. And for some of us, there's that kind of a move down the road. For you, what happened between then and now?
Yeah. So I first felt my call to missions after my first mission trip to Mexico, my freshman year of high school. And there was something about that trip that stirred my heart in a way I hadn't experienced, something about that week that resonated with me in a way I hadn't experienced before. And I came back from that week or 10 days or however long, really strong with a conviction that that was going to be my future. God was going to call me somewhere overseas.
And what age was that?
I would have been 15.
15.
14 or 15. And as I'm sure many of you have experienced maybe in your own life, the rest of high school sets in and you get a little complacent sometimes. Or maybe there's some of you who are on fire and that's awesome. Keep going. That's incredible. But for me, my story was that I was a shy, timid girl who was fearful and really let complacency creep in. And so the rest of high school happened. I was a believer, but I wasn't. I don't know that you could tell that I was a believer from any other action or lifestyle behavior choice. Went to college, went to Indiana Wesleyan, and it was my junior year of college where I just got invested into, I got poured into really, really deeply and got into a discipleship relationship, a mentoring friendship with somebody from church, our good friend Andrea. And Andrea invited other people into that circle as well. So it wasn't just Andrea, it was multiple other people who we were meeting weekly. We were in the Word, we were discipling together. And when I was in that community, a community of discipleship I hadn't experienced before, it was then that I felt that freedom to come back to God and say, are you still calling me to missions? Is that still an option? Is that still on the table? Or has my unfaithfulness ruined it? Have I missed that opportunity? And God is faithful. And so it was in those final years of college that he began stirring my heart because he put me, and I said yes. I had to say yes. He's always ready to place us where he's calling us to, but we get to respond to that. And I had said yes to, this is the community I want to be in, I want to be invested in. These are women that I just mothers and sisters in the faith that I can look up to. And their investment poured into me and gave me the freedom to take what felt like a scary step back into, could mission still be on the horizon for me? And God made that really clear, that even though in my fear, in my complacency, even in some of my unfaithfulness, that doesn't determine how he responds to me. He is always faithful. He is always true. He is always consistent. And so the next yes for me was, God, where and when? And so in conversation with somebody, India came up in conversation, and the next yes I knew for me at that time was, God, if you're calling me to India, then I need to go. I need to see what this is. And so that yes was going on a short-term mission trip. And then there was another yes and another yes. When I came back from that short-term trip, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that God was calling me to a life of missions, or to a season of missions. And so my next yes was quitting my job and finding another job that would be more understanding or more flexible for what this could look like. Before I had a chance to even really sit down on my knees and pray about it, I was approached by somebody, hey, are you looking for a job? I've got an opening. And it worked out. And this was somebody who also had a heart for missions.
Yeah.
Was willing to think outside the box of what vacation days could look like.
Yes.
What could that look like if I was gone for a couple months at a time? God provided in a way, but he needs me to say yes. And he's going to provide and be faithful.
I wonder if you could turn, what I heard was three things. I heard that there was an initial kind of seed planted, and maybe it was even planted at an age where culturally for us, we may struggle to give a lot of value to that call because it's a little bit early. Maybe it's emotionally, you know what I mean? We have all these things that we add to it. But for you, that was valid.
Yeah.
So there was a seed, then there were nurturers
Yes.
of that seed. And then there was a pattern set, a yes pattern. Can you just talk right to us? You told us about your life example, but based on what you have learned, we want to see that happen here in our family.
Yeah.
We want to see our young people and people of all generations have these little seeds planted that are taken seriously.
Yes.
And we want to experience mentoring like you did, a kind of nurturing of that ground. And we want to see new patterns set. Can you talk right to us and just tell us, in your experience, tell us what to do?
What would you say to the teen in the room who maybe even today, what would you say to even the teen in the room who maybe feels a call to be a missionary or a pastor, or what would you say to that young one listening?
If that's what you're experiencing and sensing, maybe it feels like a nagging voice. Sometimes it just keeps coming up. That's been my experience of like, okay, it's been brought up 17 times today by 17 different people that I did not prompt that.
Yes.
Listen to that.
Yes.
And get involved and rub shoulders with people who you see are running that race and going at full speed.
Yes.
Put yourself in relationship and contact with people who you see that are following after Jesus. And so I think sometimes we expect, we think we need to wait for somebody to approach us and say, hey, can I come alongside you? Can I mentor you? Can I spend time with you? I think go for it. If you sense that, seek out those people that you see are running that race that you admire and want to maybe imitate some of that. Approach them and put them in your path rather than waiting for them to come to you.
As that Timothy, we have a room full of awesome Pauls, men and women. Can you just tell them as they sit there what it meant? You talked about Andrea. There were others.
Yeah.
You talked about David and the role that he played. Can you just tell them maybe as an encouragement? We want for the Timothys to seek out a Paul, but that can be kind of intimidating.
Yes.
we also want our Pauls to be searching out. Can you just tell them what that meant to you and what it felt like?
Yeah. On the flip side, as I said before, go and seek them out. But I was also sought out as well, and I was poured into because I made myself available. This image has been on repeat the past couple weeks of being a cup upright. You can keep pouring and keep pouring and keep pouring onto a cup, but if the cup is upside down, it's not going to hold the water. And so those who are the Pauls, look out for people who you notice their cup is upright.
Hey,
their
wow.
cup is ready to be
Mic doesn't
poured
work.
into, and then just
Yes.
pour and pour and pour,
Yes.
and just hear them out. Affirm and validate what they're sensing. Come alongside them to encourage them. But find those people, seek out those people, those young people or others, peers, that you sense their cup is upright and empty and ready to be poured into.
Okay.
The cup is upright.
All right.
Don't you love that?
I'm going to write it down.
Paul's in the room, saints, elders, youth leaders, moms and dads, grandmas, grandpas, matriarchs, patriarchs. Is your cup upright? Is the younger generation seeing that you're still teachable, that you're still hearing from the Lord, that you're still spirit-filled, that you have fruits of the Spirit? Do they want to come and pick from your tree? That is so good. I love that. Oh, that's so good.
Thank you.
Yes. I think that helps us come to our... Do you have anything else that you'd like to say to the congregation in regard to that before I talk more? Okay. Okay. An invitation, yes.
I do have something.
Yes, say
I do
it.
have something. Okay, so a couple weeks ago, I thought about this morning as we just kept hearing yes, yes, yes. A couple weeks ago, I was visiting Asbury University, their WGM Global Cafe event, and the thing that I heard them say over and over and over again, they would end prayer and they would say, yes and, yes and. And I finally asked somebody, I said, what is yes and? Like, we hear people say yes, yes over and over again, but I thought maybe I wasn't hearing the third word they were saying. And no, it's just yes and. Because when you say yes, there's always going to be something else that God leads you to. And so this approach to being expectant that God's going to call you even beyond what you had in mind, but to be ready to go to the places where and leads you.
Oh, my word.
And so just thinking about what is the yes and, be ready to follow after him.
Are you serious right now?
James Ballard.
No, we're thankful. We're thankful for the yeses that you have lived and the ands that you have lived.
Yes.
I believe that what you are doing, a lot of attention and energy gets put into church planning and preaching and church in the traditional form. If we don't get more creative with things like what you are doing in certain places of the world, there is no place for the church to gain traction. And so finding a creative space like this is exactly the kind of creativity that the Holy Spirit has. And it takes people like you who are sensitive and willing to just say, yes, I'm not sure what everybody's going to think about this, but yes.
Yes and.
Yes and.
Yes,
and we'll just
and.
find out what happens.
Yes.
And I just pray that you find out that the place where God has put you is exactly where the fruit is getting ready to come.
Yes.
So that you can be there to receive it, to disciple it, to mentor it. We're proud of you, Tiffany.
Yes, so good. Pastor Sean, can you come up with your team? Thank you, Tiffany.